Hello, this is Chief Lee, and welcome to another edition of Black History Month. I want to put up some information now. The title of this presentation is Do You Really Want to Abolish Racism? Well, if you do, you got to ask why Africans were invaded in the first place. Okay, and the answer to that is right below on that map there. You can see Africa right in the center of your screen. And you can see that Europeans were in the north. They left their land to come and invade us for no reason. We had committed no crimes. We were living in peace with God and nature, but they saw fit to leave their land and invade us. Now, they drafted a document called the Discovery Document on May 4th, 1493, by Pope Alexander VI. And this document, in their minds, gave them the right to invade Native Americans, okay, and to sell them as slaves, to seize their property, all because they did not look like them, they did not have the same religion, they did not live in the same place. So we're going to begin to see the beginning of racism and how it started. Now, Columbus landed in the Bahamas. Now you see there in 1492. And he met a group of Indians called the Taínos. These were black Indians. In fact, we know that they used the word Indian for the first time to mean black man, such as Indy ink. Indy ink means black ink, and so it was made to symbolize the black man in the Spanish vernacular at that time. Okay, and so they rounded them up. They were looking for gold. They found a lot of gold in the hills of Haiti, Dominican, but when they ran out of gold, then they were faced with selling human people for profit. And to do that under Spanish law, they had to declare them as cannibals, something that would make them outside of the protection of the law in order to do that. Now, when they did that, they were able to round up, especially black women, usually beautiful, attractive black women, to sell them into slavery in Europe. Okay, so we've heard a lot about slavery in the American colonies, but Native Americans, the Indians, were the first one to be sold as slaves. So we want to make that known. Now, what they did was a crime against nature, but they covered up the crime by saying these are cannibals. Now, you can read authors like Sanderson, Beck. They tell the whole story. They look at copies of Columbus ship log and so on. But anyway, they drafted these things to justify their actions. And of course, the cities were burned. We had cities, we had civilizations that were burned. Black women were left homeless, the way some are today. And I'm going to say that the only way you can heal racism is to look at the root cause, how it began. It began by demonizing black women, uh, especially black women, but black men too, setting them up as cannibals, as somebody that cannot be protected by the European law, especially the Spanish law, because Columbus was working for the Spanish crown at this time. So we have to look at the beginning of racism. If you want to get rid of it, just like if you want to get rid of grass out of your lawn, you got to dig it up by the root. There's so many people want to talk about racism in America, but they don't even start in here where it began. Now, this is where your red light districts, as time went on and these women were repeatedly raped, then they began to set up a business themselves to profit in these island nations. And sailors, European sailors, would go to their houses and they would take their lanterns from their ships, and this would let the ship captain know where they were in case they needed to sail on a moment's notice. Now, these places became known as the red light districts. Red light because of the lanterns that were left on the porch to let the ship captain know where his men was. Now, even today, your what you pay for insurance is based upon where you live, your zip code. Okay, if you live in a red light district, you're going to pay more for insurance. So this is where it all began. This is where a lot of your stereotypes begin that still plaguing blacks today as drug users, as somebody that, and black women as somebody that's loose with their bodies. But these women were beaten. They were beaten and raped into submission. It's also in Columbus records and everything. But let's talk about what happened before. Now, before all of this, we were a prosperous people. You see Mobilla, which is in central Alabama. The pyramids are still there. Mobilla was a population of over 80,000 according to Spanish records, and they're the ones who should know because they were invaded. Now we look at the people that invaded as being eyewitness, so they have more credibility. Just like in a court today, somebody that was an eyewitness has more credibility than somebody who's not an eyewitness. But we had games such as ball play. And ball play, by the way, became what we now know as football. Okay, we had the red pose were there, and they're still there today. The red pose were there, and a person could strike the pose, they could score points. And the animals that you see right here, the bags of goods, the winner could take all. Winner take all. Okay, they had the ducks, the chickens, the dog, the bulls, the horses. They could take everything. We had lots of things for our young people to do. They played musical instruments, the banjo, the flute, the horn, and such and such and such. We had of course, the architects who built our place. That's an architect right there. These places were all high rises. Okay, there were no single family dwellings at that time. Everybody was busy. Everybody was productive. We had the medicine, of course, right there in the center of your screen. We had our own medicine, and we continue to trade with our African partners. They think that we deserted them, but we did not desert them at all. We continued to trade with them as best we could before the embargoes went up, and our ships, the Black Indian tribes, could no longer send ships to Africa. So this is a good shot. It's an introduction as to why racism is so hard to get rid of. It's in the deep fabrics of Native America. Okay, but you've got to start with the black woman. If you don't start by erasing those stereotypes that was created, Queen Elizabeth was interested in how her subjects were doing. So not all Spaniards had turned their back on this wrongdoing. She sent a letter to Columbus, wanted to know the report of how they were doing. And there were certain bishops and friars who did the same thing. Of course, they were quickly replaced in many cases. But nevertheless, if you want to know how to get rid of racism in America, you have to look at those stereotypes that were created in the very beginning. Lack of employment in black neighborhoods was always created by the Discovery Doctrine, and so far nobody's ever been able to repeal it. Okay, but at least you know how this all started. Okay, at least you know that your first slaves were Indians from the Bahamas and the West Indies. They went to Europe. Okay, before black slaves were hauled from Africa, they were taken to Europe for enslavement. So there you have it. I hope this helped you at least understand. You might not be able to solve it, but at least you understand how these things got started.